Good evening and welcome to the April 29th, 2026 meeting of the Wilmington School Committee. All members are in attendance with the exception of Dr. Bryson, who will be joining us shortly. Please join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. The first item on our agenda is the student representative report from Wilmington High School with our student representative, Jackson Kiley. Jackson, good evening. Thank you. Whenever you're ready.
All right. Friday the 17th marked the last day of school for the class of 2026. Seniors have now transitioned into their senior exploration internships and capstone projects, gaining real-world experience in a variety of fields. Students enrolled in AP or performing arts courses will continue attending those classes through the date of their AP exam or their final performance, and will be balancing their internship responsibilities with their remaining academic ones. AP testing, while on that topic, will take place from May 4th through May 15th. Students have been preparing through in-class reviews, practice exams, and additional support sessions with their teachers as they enter one of the most academically demanding points of the year. Over the past few weeks, many students have had the opportunity to participate in field trips and travel experiences. There have been a lot, and some of them include the Oceans to Orbit trip to Florida, the Spanish exchange trip, and the Lamplighters Drama Club trip to London. And these experiences allowed students to expand their learning beyond the classroom, explore new environments and engage with different cultures. The class of 2027 held its junior prom on March 27th at the Hillview Country Club in North Reading. This event was well attended and provided an opportunity for students to come together and celebrate. And looking ahead, the class of 2026's senior prom will take place this Friday at the Castleton in New Hampshire. And there's still a lot to look forward to at Wilmington High School. The music department has several upcoming performances, including a concert band performance with the 7th and 8th grade bands in the high school auditorium at 7 p.m. Tomorrow. There will also be a jazz band and pops ensemble performance on the town common on May 19th, the orchestra concert on May 7th, and the chorus concert on May 14th. All three of those events are also scheduled for 7 p.m. The high school will once again host the Special Olympics on Friday, May 15th. Wilmington will have students from all of its schools competing, and high school students, staff, and families will be coming out to the field to support the athletes throughout the day. And it continues to be a meaningful and unifying event for the school community. And senior week for the class of 2026 will begin on May 26th. The week will start with the Internship Expo, where students will reflect on their experiences interning at their various places. And the remainder of the week will include a variety of events such as a class dinner, a field day, and the senior sunset, giving students time to celebrate their final days together before graduation on May 31st. That's it. It's a short one this time.
Short maybe, but it's quite a bit of information packed in there. Thank you, Jackson. Anybody have any questions or comments? All right, quiet group time. Yeah. Mr. Turner, go ahead.
So, can I ask what your internship's going to be?
Yeah, so I'm doing in-district work for Senator Barry Feingold, who is the district's senator. So I'm going to be doing like news roundups, and they mentioned something. I had a meeting, like a virtual meeting with them yesterday. They mentioned something about like drafting like citations for members of the community, and towards the end of it, I may be like going out and attending like events like with my supervisor, because she's still currently working remotely from, I believe she's in DC because she's finishing up a master's program down there. So she's going to be coming back for like my last week, and there may be some like in district like events like the community that I might attend. So.
Fantastic. Thank you for sharing. Very cool.
Mr. Golden.
I just have to say, I interned at the State House in my path in life, and I can't say better things about it. It's a great experience. If you can go to the speaker series they do during the summer, if you can catch that, that's super useful and interesting. And if you want to talk about Haverhill, the other end of the district, we'll chat after.
All I also have to give a big thanks to Mr. Fenelix. He's the one who got me in touch with Senator Feingold, so if it weren't for him, I honestly don't know where I would be interning right now. So.
He's happy to do it, and your accomplishments speak for themselves. You didn't need any help from me, Jackson. Thank you, Mr. Turner.
I think what Mr. Golden is suggesting is that if you truly embrace his path, someday in about 5 or 10 years, you can be back at a school committee as an elected member.
This is the kind of recruitment we need.
I will say, while I didn't intern at the State House, I did work there for several years, and that speaker series really is a great experience. If you are able to attend any of those, they usually have some great folks that participate in that. So, other questions, maybe not directly related to Jackson? All right, thank you very much. All right, excuse me, our consent agenda. We have, let's do this a little bit out of order, disposal of surplus materials from the ELA department. There's a memo in the packet from Ms. Elliott. Does anybody have any questions, comments, issues, concerns? Anything you want to add?
28-year-old textbooks, don't need those.
All right. All right, all those in favor, sorry, I think we need a motion for that. Mr. Turner, second. Mr. Golden, all those in favor?
Way to go.
Unanimous. All right, come on, guys, let's get with it.
Time for caffeine.
Additionally, we have disposal of surplus materials at the Roman House. Again, a memo in your packet. Dr. Thompson, anything you'd like to add to that?
Nope, we have reused and reappropriated all that we could, and the rest is either in disrepair or not really wanted. So the town will dispose of that or reappropriate as they deem fit to clean it all up, so.
All right. Is there a motion?
I actually have a question.
Please.
Yep.
By the town, was this contact you had with the town manager, or then through him for the rest of the administration, or?
I would go through probably the facilities, Mr. Kelly,
Oh, okay.
and let him,
Did
there
he-
really isn't a lot there. It's a couple old dusty file cabinets, but yeah.
Yeah, that's great. And so then Dennis theoretically could reach out to any historically
department if they
interested
needed
and
a
say
file
he went back
cabinet or
and
what
went
have
there.
you, and
That's
then,
right.
Yeah.
then the rest would.
Want this historically significant file cabinet.
Right, yeah.
It's like Indiana Jones Area 51 in the movie, right? We have to
Yep.
pull through it. So,
Yep.
great. I'll move to make this motion.
All right, Mr. Golden moves approval. Is there a second? Enthusiastically. Dr. McCall.
We're on it.
I appreciate you guys being on top of it. Motion made and seconded. All those in favor? Unanimous. All right. Continuing with the consent agenda, we have minutes from April 8th, 2026. We have grants 35 through 37, revolving 64 through 71, local 111 through 117, food service 60 through 63, and FS5 and FS6, circuit breaker 21 and 22, special education 59 through 64, and payroll 4/22/26 and 5/6/2026. Is there a motion? Mr. Turner, is there a second? Mr. Ragsdale, all those in favor? Unanimous. Well done, guys. Thank you so much. All right, that brings us to the superintendent's report. Dr. Thompson.
Yes, so I will start the report with the memo that is in your packet, which announces that we have hired and appointed the Assistant Director of Special Education. That is Kelly Alessandro. She has currently serves as the District Special Team Education Chair at Wilmington High School. Prior to this role, she was Special Education Administrator at Methuen High School, where she once oversaw day-to-day operations in collaboration with the Program Director. And before that, she worked as an Autism Resource Room teacher and has a lot of experience coming to us. We're glad that she is stepping up and moving up to take over that important role, and we welcome her to the team. Then you might have seen the news or gotten a message from me, but we did unfortunately have a bus accident yesterday, bus leaving from the West School to go to the Shawsheen. Want to thank Wilmington Police and Fire for their quick and speedy response. Also, all the staff who did exactly what they were supposed to do, going to the accident, taking care of the children, arranging for a bus to get them back. The nurse there then checked the children to make sure that they were okay again after the fire department checked them and got them back and reunited them with the parents, so things went swimmingly. I want to thank all those that were involved to make that happened seamlessly. I mean, it's not something you want to do every week or every day, but I think the preparedness of everybody involved is something to be celebrated. So it was nice to know that it was a slow news day and Channel 5 got to fly their helicopter up here to Wilmington, but yes, we did manage to get a statement out to all the news services as well. Same statement, but that's okay. The other thing, at your place, you guys get a preview of the information that's going to go out tomorrow and through the weekend. Tomorrow via a message home to families. It will also be part of newsletters and also be put on the website. But the U.S. Attorney's Office here in Massachusetts is putting on a free webinar called Keeping Kids Safe and Secure Online, Project Safe Childhood Presentation for Adults. It's for adults, not for children, but it covers social media 101 and digital footprint, protecting against online predation, gaming, sextortions, and violence. And the flyer will be going out tomorrow. Please register for the webinar. It is free. It does not cost anything. And as you all know, we are seeing an increase in these sorts of things. We would like parents to please take a little time on Thursday between 6:30 p.m. and 8 p.m. and partake in that free webinar. The other bit of news is that the rear video door intercom is installed here at Town Hall. What that will allow people to do is if they need to come to the school department during the times that the town hall is not in operation, that's basically 7:30 to 8:30 on a daily basis, and Fridays after 12:30, they can go to the rear door and buzz in and we can let them in. And that's my report, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Dr. Thompson. Questions for the superintendent on the superintendent's report? Dr. McCaldy.
Yeah, so thanks for highlighting the, how people can come in after hours on Friday, which is not really after hours for the school department, but is for the town hall. And I saw the sign out front too.
Yeah.
Was wondering if there's going to be any further communication with people in the community about this, so everyone's
Yeah,
aware.
we will get that out. We're now currently trying to get the signage all to line up. But that, even if people come off the street, and the main thing is basically dropping things off, and we are going to be entering open enrollment, people registering or changing healthcare or whatnot. So that sort of thing, but we'll get that out as well.
Thank you.
Welcome.
And if I sort of tag onto that, I appreciate that we'll communicate that to families. To be clear, the back door is this one that faces the Bazell that essentially brings you in on the second floor.
Brings you in the second floor, then you have to either take the elevator or walk to the third floor.
So folks coming to the school department, quote, after hours or outside of town hall's regular hours,
Yep.
would be advised to park at the old senior center and come in that door.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I would suggest we make that.
Right, and we close at 4, and the town hall closes at 4:30, so there's,
Right.
but,
Okay. Yeah, I know there was a couple of public
Yep.
comments that were submitted about that, so thank you for addressing that. Other questions, comments? Okay, thank you, Dr. Thompson.
thank you.
That's a nice segue into public comment. We did receive several public comments in the packet. Some of them have just been, at least at some level, addressed based on Dr. Thompson's information on the school department being available to folks outside of town hall's normal operating hours. That said, we would open the meeting to public comments. And hearing none. Thank you. I would say there's another one in here. I know we don't generally sort of address the public comment submissions in the meeting, and maybe we should, and that's a conversation for another day, but there's a conversation in here, and we had received an email, I think from this gentleman as well, sort of related to bus safety / transportation policy, broadly speaking. More on this to come, but I know Dr. Thompson has reached out to Ms. Fretcher, our transportation director, to sort of start compiling some of this information, and when it is, will be shared with you guys, and we can determine sort of the next best steps forward. So more to come on that. So that concludes public comment and brings us into new business, and the first item on our list this evening, we have special guest, Coordinator of Behavioral Health and Social Emotional Support, Ms. Erin Dunham, joining us to present the Youth Risk Behavior Survey results. Good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you for being
having
here.
me.
Ms. Murray, are you joining us, or are you just here for support? Okay, thank you.
Good friends.
Welcome.
So joining us today to present the slideshow is a representative from JSI, who is the organization that sort of acts as the middleman to coordinate information. And so that is Becca Millock.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me and see my screen?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, great. I'm sorry, I was on a bit of a delay. So I think, Aaron, you were just introducing me, but I'll introduce myself again. My name is Becca Millock. I'm a consultant at JSI Research and Training Institute, Inc. We're a nonprofit consulting firm in Boston. Today, I'm presenting the results from the 2025 Wilmington Public Schools Youth Health Survey. So this data represents the collective voice of middle and high school students, providing insight on their wellness, safety, and general health behaviors. So we've broken this presentation up into 4 sections. In the first, I'll give some background information about the survey. Next, I'll share information about who participated in the survey this year. We'll go over some key findings, and then we'll hopefully have time to answer any questions you may have. So the Youth Health Survey is conducted by Wilmington every 2 years, and it's used to monitor risky behaviors among school-aged youth. So I'd like to begin by outlining our survey development process. So we utilize 2 distinct versions of the survey, a comprehensive version for high school students, and then a shorter, more streamlined version for middle school students. To ensure that districts have meaningful benchmarks that can be used to contextualize the results, we collaborated with Wilmington and other Middlesex League districts to create a unified, what we call a core survey. So this core survey, similar questions are asked across districts, and it allows them to compare their data to the entire league. While the core survey questions are largely modeled after the CDC's Youth Risk Behavior Survey, also familiarly known as the YRBS, and the Massachusetts Youth Health Survey, the YHS, each district, including Wilmington, had the opportunity to add additional questions to address specific local needs. The resulting surveys for both middle and high school cover critical areas such as protective factors, mental health, substance use, among others. And then finally, we review these instruments every 2 years to ensure that we are staying ahead or on top of emerging trends. Turning to the administration process, Wilmington conducted the survey in the spring of 2025 for all students in grades 6 through 12. Prior to the launch, the school provided parents with formal notification of the survey and gave them an opportunity to opt their child or children out of participation. And then finally here on this slide, looking at the reporting, we analyzed data for the total student population as well as by grade level, gender identity, sexual orientation, race, and ethnicity. We applied confidence intervals to test for statistical significance. So significance testing is important because it helps us discern if variations in results are random or if they actually represent a real difference in behavior. Where possible, we conducted some comparative analyses against, as I mentioned, the Middlesex League, and then state benchmarks, as well as longitudinal comparisons with data from previous survey cycles. In this presentation here, we're largely looking at just Wilmington data, but there is a full report that has more of those comparisons to the league and the state. Before we dive into this year's participation and key findings, I just wanted to emphasize why this regular data collection is so important. So it provides far more than just a snapshot of current student behaviors. This data really allows districts to tailor their curricula, design targeted interventions, and crucially measure the effectiveness of any ongoing programs. And also by identifying emerging trends early, districts can remain proactive rather than reactive in supporting student well-being. Okay. So there's a lot going on here, but this is kind of a breakdown of who participated in the 2025 survey. So overall, 372 high school students and 529 middle school students surveys were included in the final analyses. We do some data cleaning prior to doing the analysis, and that's based on CDC standards. So in all these kind of boxes here, we have the breakdowns by grade, gender identity, sexual orientation, race, and then we have a small little call out for ethnicity. The dark blue bars at the top represent the middle school population, and then the light blue bars below that, this dotted line, represent the high school population. In the interest of time, I think we could take, a solid 10 minutes going over this, but I won't go over every figure here. But just in general, this type of information provides context for sample sizes specifically when we're as we're referencing specific subgroups later in the presentation. And I think these slides will be shared so people can have more time to kind of take a deeper dive. Okay, so key findings. As I mentioned, we shared a full report that includes results for all survey questions. In this presentation, we're just pulling some select findings from the following topic areas. So social connections, bullying, mental health, substance use, physical activity, nutrition, screen time or social media, and sleep. So let's start with social connections. So time and again, research shows that connectedness is one of the single most important factors in determining a person and thereby students' overall health. Students were asked about their connection to various types of individuals, so teachers or adults in their schools, a non-family adult outside of school, a family adult, and then a friend of similar age. Specifically, we asked if they felt comfortable or if they felt they could talk to these different types of folks about their problems. So the dark blue bars on the left represent the middle school data, and the lighter blue bars represent the high school data. You can see, I hope, that we have very high percentages of connection across the board for high school students, so ranging from 87% for a non-family adult outside of school, all the way up to 96% for a friend of similar age. Middle school students have slightly lower connections to adults both in school and outside of school, not including family, and this is similar to what we see in other districts. Yeah. So there was one significant difference in middle school results. So LGBTQ plus middle school students were significantly less likely to have a non-family member outside of school to talk to about a problem, or a family adult to talk to about a problem. So only 56% of LGBTQ plus students, middle school students, had a non-family adult to talk to, compared to 76%. And then 76% had a family adult to talk to, compared to 93%. And the 93% again represents all middle school students. So again, in these darker blue bars. So next we have bullying. So students were asked if they've been bullied on school property or electronically or cyberbullying in the past 12 months. I have two trend graphs below with the middle school in dark blue and the high school in light blue. So start at the left side here is bullying on school property in the past 2 months, and then the graph on the right is electronic bullying. So while high school bullying rates have remained stable after peaking in 2019, both in-person and electronic bullying in middle school have increased since they were first recorded in 2023. Since we only have the 2 years of data for the middle school, I think it's important to continue monitoring this and to see if this increase is just a blip or it's more of a longer trend. In addition to just the trend analysis, there were two statistically significant findings from this year. So transgender and gender diverse students, or TGD, and LGBTQ plus students were significantly more likely to be bullied on school property than the average middle school student. So 50% of TGD students and 40% of LGBTQ plus students experienced bullying at school compared to the 18% overall. Okay, our next topic area focuses on student mental health. So the data on this slide summarizes responses to questions regarding general well-being, depression, and suicide ideation. Beginning with general well-being, so that's on the left here, students reported how often their mental health was not good over the past 30 days. This seems very generic, but it is a CDC question, so we felt it was important to include because it does give us some of that comparative data. So this graph specifically highlights students who responded that their mental health was not good most of the time or always in the past 30 days. It's a positive sign here that both middle school and high school results have been trending downward since 2021. So next in the center graph here, we have data regarding depression. So students were asked if they felt so sad or hopeless for 2 or more consecutive weeks that they stopped doing their usual activities in the past 12 months. I'm sorry, that's a lot to take in. So we've just shortened it, and when we talk about it here, just to depression. While high school percentages remained fairly consistent between 2019 to 2023, we saw a positive drop this year in 2025. This is a little common for middle schools, but it is only the second year that we've been asking them this question. But they did report a slight decrease this year from 2023. It looks flat, but I think there's a 1 percentage point difference. And then finally, we turn to suicide ideation, representing students who seriously considered attempting suicide in the past 12 months. So high school results have continued a steady decline since 2019. In contrast, middle school results now in their second year of tracking showed a slight increase from 2023 this year. Overall, these results are generally positive. However, there are several disparities across demographic groups, which we'll look at in this next slide. The graphs on this slide compares our overall findings to those reported by our TGD and LGBTQ plus students across those 3 mental health indicators on the previous slide. So just note that the high school data for TGD students is excluded here, just to protect student anonymity, as fewer than 10 responded within this group to these questions. So looking first at the middle school results on the left, the light blue bars represent the overall population, while the green bar represents TGD students who identify as TGD, and then orange are students who identify as LGBTQ+. So even before looking at the specific data points, it's immediately clear that TGD and LGBTQ+ students report significantly higher and therefore more concerning rates across all 3 indicators. In terms of significance, TGD middle schoolers were significantly more likely to experience depression, while LGBTQ+ students were significantly more likely to report poor mental health, experience depression, and consider suicide when compared to the average middle school student. So if we look now at the high school results, we see similar disparities for our LGBTQ+ students compared to the general population. However, in terms of statistical significance, their LGBTQ+ high schoolers were significantly more likely to experience only depression. So just this middle group here. So our next topic area is substance use. This slide presents the results for lifetime use across several categories. So alcohol, electronic vapor products or vapes, marijuana, cigarettes, and prescription drugs. So the tables compare the percentage of students who have ever used these substances between 2019 and 2025. On the left, we have the middle school data. which shows that while most categories have remained relatively stable, lifetime alcohol use has dropped by half over the past 6 years. And then if we look at high school results on the right, you'll notice a significant decline across all substances. So this shift reflects a broader encouraging trend where we're seeing a substantial decrease in substance use across the youth population as a whole. So on the slide here, you can see that high school use has decreased by over 50% for each substance. We also looked at current use, so that's defined as substance use within the past 30 days for those same substances. We're focusing exclusively on the high school data here just because the reporting percentages for the middle school students was very low. As you might expect, these results mirror the lifetime use trends. So we're seeing, again, substantial across-the-board decreases in current use, continuing the positive trajectory. We have one more slide here on substance use. So beyond actual usage, we also measured students' perception of risk, perception of harm, perception of access, among others. So in this slide specifically, we're looking at perception of harm. So this graph represents the percentage of high school students who believe that using certain substances, specific frequencies or quantities, poses moderate or great risk of harm. What is particularly noteworthy here, and I know these lines are kind of all over each other, so it's a little bit hard to discern what is what. But what's interesting is that while actual substance use is declining, as we saw in the previous slides, the perception of harm for most of these substances has actually trended downward since 2021. So even though students are using them less, they're perceiving their harm as less as well. There is one exception here, which is this orange line at the bottom, and that represents marijuana use once or twice a week. So this is the only metric where perception of risk has remained steady or increased. And these categories here, just to point out, so having 1 or 2 drinks of alcohol nearly every day, having 5 or more drinks of alcohol once or twice a week, they're largely informed by the CDC YRBS, and then also for some BSAS programming where these questions are required for their grant opportunities. Okay. So our next topic area is physical activity. So this graph represents the percentage of students who were active for at least 60 minutes on 5 or more of the past 7 days. While we're not displaying trend lines here, our data in the report shows that middle school participation has remained relatively stable since 2019, where high school percentages have seen a steady and encouraging increase. We did identify several statistically significant differences, both middle and high school students identifying as LGBTQ+, as well as TGD middle school students were significantly less likely to meet these physical activity benchmarks compared to the average student. Just a few more slides now. So with nutrition, we looked at the percentage of students who reported eating breakfast every day in the past week. As the data shows, middle school percentage is slightly higher than high school students, which aligns with broader national trends. The percentages for both of these groups have remained relatively consistent since 2019. So next we have social media. This question was first added to the CDC survey in 2023, and this is actually the first year it was included on the Wilmington surveys. So the figures here represent students who report using social media several times a day or more. So that is where the CDC determined the cutoff to be for this question for reporting. Currently, middle school participation middle school social media use stands at 53%, while high school usage is significantly higher at 82%. as this is a baseline year for this data, more exploration and including this question and collecting data on it in future cycles is really important to just fully understand trends and to draw more definitive conclusions. And so the last slide here for the findings. So this is on sleep. Students were asked to report how many hours of sleep they get on an average school night. So currently about 70% of middle school students report getting 8 or more hours of sleep compared to about 30% of high school students. Again, we don't have trend graphs in this presentation, but just to note that both middle school and high school students have seen this increase since 2019. So middle school rates rose from 42% in 2019 to 65% this year, while the high school rates almost doubled from 19% in 2019 to 33% this year. There is one statistically significant difference to highlight. So LGBTQ plus high school students were significantly less likely to meet this 8-hour threshold, with only 17% reporting that they slept 8 or more hours on an average school night. So I fully realize that was a lot to take in, but we highly encourage people to sit with these slides and also review the report. But if anyone does have any questions, we'll do my best to answer them.
Thank you. Mr. Golden, can you hear us okay, by the way?
I can, yeah. I'll stop sharing.
So I have 3 questions, 2 for Becca, 1 for Erin, and 2 comments. Buckle up. Do you want to spread this out, or should I just go?
Nope, you have the floor.
So first of all, Becca, why are trans students a separate subgroup from the rest of the LGBTQ plus students?
Yeah, so we wanted to differentiate between identity versus orientation. So for LGBTQ plus, we really identified that as a sexual orientation, and then identifying as transgender, we associated that with gender identity.
Cool. Can we / the public have we have national data from other communities that we can compare this to as like a baseline?
Yeah, so like I said, in the full report, there are comparisons to not only the Middlesex League, so 12 school districts that probably are more similar to Wilmington, but then also there is state comparison data. We do have national data from the CDC that we could pull in if that's helpful as well.
Yeah, as long as I can get a copy, and I'm sure I can, of the actual full report, I'd love to see kind of how all of this lines up. Erin, I'm sorry, this is my last question, then just 2 quick comments. I think the mental health and substance use data are awesome wins, right? I mean, the substance use crashed for whatever reason. So I asking you, having run some of this programming, to what do you attribute that? Is it something that we're doing in the district that you think is doing this, or what do you make of that data?
Quickly, before I answer your question, I just want to note that the Wilmington survey occurred in December of 2025, not spring of 2025. It was originally intended for the spring.
I apologize.
That was my error. I apologize. With regard to the results and what we're attributing that to, I would argue, at least from the mental health perspective, we have our surveys have allowed us to understand a bit more about some of our sort of the mental health needs of our students, especially sort of the sense of belonging piece of information, I think is incredibly important. So, I'm thinking about our Panorama survey, which gives us a lot of information about how our students are feeling and functioning, and those are administered twice a year. I'm noticing that our Panorama data is referenced and reflected at various different points in sort of a student's kind of day-to-day sort of, academic life. So those scores could be reflected when we're having a student support team meeting. Those are scores that we're looking at when we're thinking about our our implementation of SEL lessons. So I really think about sort of our screening and how that has proven to be really important in terms of intervening and doing some preventative work. When I think about some of the concerns around sort of depression, thoughts of suicidality, we also do the signs of suicide screener that happens at the middle school and high school for our 7th and 10th graders. Again, a really important entry point to have those conversations about what would be sort of signs that either you or yourself or somebody you care about is struggling. Really emphasizes the importance of identifying trusted adults, both inside of school and outside of school. That screener really gives us an opportunity based on student responses to have more individualized conversations about what their needs may be depending on their answers. So I really think that we're doing a nice job really screening and doing that preventative work, and that is reflective in our scores and our results.
Yeah, I think it's great. Those results are great, and it's a testament to the work the district has done before I joined the committee for a long time. Comment that I thought was 2 comments is 1 comment. So basically, when we initially discussed this, and there was the situation in Burlington, you did a great job of leading us through this and making sure that everything was executed well, so thank you. But I also think that what we see here, the disparities between LGBTQ students and the rest of the population, that shows us why we needed to do this. Had we not asked students who they are, had we not done the survey, these children would be suffering in silence, right? They are within our purview. They are our responsibility to care for and make sure they have a safe and quality education. And I think that the idea that we would have dropped this because it's touchy or somehow to some people overly controversial would put those children at greater risk. And as long as I'm on the school committee, I refuse to ever drop asking these kids who they really are and what they need to not be bullied. I'll never allow that to happen. So, I'm really grateful that we were able to do this. And I think the next follow-on to that is I hope we can take some kind of extra action. We've shown that based on this data that we can help all of our students feel and do better in school. Now it's the next step, which is how do we make sure that we reduce bullying targeted at certain groups of kids just because of who they are. So that's it. That's all my thoughts.
Thank you, Mr. Golden.
Yeah.
Appreciate that. Well said. Mr. Turner?
First of all, thank you both very much. And I echo a lot of Mr. Golden's thoughts on the importance of the survey. One detailed question on the number of high school students that responded this time. Is that a significant, as a percentage of the overall high school population, is that significantly different? Because I'd be curious if the substance abuse piece, if we had 600 students responding last time and only had 375 this time, then it could be part of the reason why it declined so much. And I'd be worried that we were overreading into it if it was that big a decline, or is it a substantially similar number of students responding?
Yes, and I appreciate you bringing that up because that also, the numbers of high school students that participate in this survey certainly is lower than previous surveys. I think things that I would consider moving forward would be sort of how it was administered at the high school level. Their students are emailed the link. You then participate in the survey, as you're receiving the link. And so if students just chose not to participate, right, which they have the right to do, I think that certainly contributed to the decrease. I think also just really wanting to be very sensitive to sort of what the barriers were to administering the survey back in the spring. I think there was also an opportunity that students could go to an alternative location if they felt that they needed to be elsewhere and not even sort of hear instructions about the survey. So I wonder if sort of creating that opportunity also had students maybe make the choice to leave the room. So that would absolutely be something that I would want to consider more thought about as we move forward with administering this survey.
Okay, thank you. And I echo, partly there's the piece about substance abuse, and we've done a lot on that, and that does appear to show good impact. And then between No Place for Hate at the middle school and some of the other programs, I hope we're able to use this and leverage that to grow our support for, mental health, but also working on the topic of bullying. The one that jumps out at me, and I did rough math, so don't quote me on the numbers here, but if I look at the seriously considered attempting suicide in the past 12 months and multiply that percentage times the number that responded, it's about 20 high school students and about 40 middle schoolers. So 1 in 2 classrooms. That's a lot of kids when you think about it in that way. It is, I mean, I know, or I understand those numbers nationwide may be substantially similar. But when I think about it in the context of the kids in our district, it's troubling, and I know we do as much as we can, and I hope we continue to do more. But it is really saddening or troubling to think about it in that way, and think about the number of students who are impacted, and then to think that some of these mental health issues do stem from lack of social connection or bullying or either lack of nutrition or lack of sleep. I mean, the ways that we could support them that could help to indirectly help students not be in that mental mindset and that level of depression.
If I could just, comment, seeing these results really made me think about, okay, what are we doing next? What are the existing partnerships that the district already has? So I think about partnerships we have forged with the nonprofit suicide prevention nonprofit Samaritans, who has already consulted with our clinical staff and provided support to our clinical staff this year. I've spoken with them again this early spring to kind of talk about what can we do next, and what additional support can we provide, very specific to this area of mental health for our students, as it relates to our transgender students and LGBTQ plus students, really thinking about the partnerships we have with the representative of Safe and Supportive Schools through DESE, who has been tremendous in really guiding and supporting us through more acute situations, but I know would be available and willing to really kind of think about this and what we can do to support our students in this particular area. I mean, we have, the surveys, offer us data. They offer us, sort of some preventative measures, but really do want to think about what are we doing next to address the need. We also have a really strong partnership with Advocates, who is sort of our regional mobile crisis intervention team. I coordinate with her monthly through a systems of care meeting. She's been incredibly helpful, the director has, in really kind of thinking about how to best sort of, support, students in sort of more unique situations. So really trying to figure out how can we expand that support.
So 2 last things, and I appreciate the time. One, in terms of the LGBTQ and transgender student populations, one of the things that I might suggest is talking to the teachers. That student population has certain activities and certain clubs that they have a stronger affinity to. And it's not just the GSA, it's different groups within the school. And so working with the teachers to meet the students where they are, I think could be a way, and obviously it would need to be done with all your expertise and professionalism that I don't have, and being appropriate in how those interactions happened. But I think part of it is we have the supports in place, but kids do have to see them and do have to engage with them to get the support. And so if we can be where they are, there may be ways to reach more of them. To part of Mr. Golden's point, I think this survey clearly highlights that there is a lot there that we need to explore, and we need to understand how we can support those students better. And the last one is kind of and with slightly lighter topic. I know students don't eat breakfast. First of all, I don't understand that. But second of all, I know a lot of students enter through the event door. And if they're in a hurry, there's not a way for them to, it's not that far into the cafeteria to grab food that we provide breakfast. If we had a cart right there by that door, because some of them just go straight up the stairs, we might be able to get that number up from 35 to 40, 45%, especially for all the student athletes, for any child. Missing breakfast impacts their attention, impacts their focus in the first few periods of the day. They'll be more receptive to learning if they have a bit more food going on. So if we could do something, again, bringing the food to where the kids are, And I don't know if there'd be a similar way we could do that with the middle school as well, for the number of students who come in through the different doors and don't happen to pass by the cafeterias.
I can certainly say on the elementary levels, and certainly they're not being surveyed here, but there are breakfast bags that sort of greet the students at each of the entrances, so that's a really good point, and I can
Exactly.
certainly look into that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dr. McCauley.
Yeah, so I think my question got addressed, was, we have all this data, what do we want to do next with it? And I think you answered that well. Just one suggestion would be when you kind of come up with those plans, I think it'd be interesting to kind of put them to the committee and to the broader community, right? Because that was, I think, some of the feedback we had going through this was like, okay, we collect this data, then what? So I think just really kind of showing the public, like, okay, here's the data, here's the plan, and then hopefully then here's the outcomes, and this is why this works and everything like that. So thank you for all your efforts on this.
Of course, no, thank you, it's a
Yeah.
team for sure, so
Yeah.
thank you.
First, a lot of work has been done. There's so much helpful information, so thank you for that. It's great to see the improvements in a lot of the numbers and also just hear about what the district is doing. So, one thing that struck me as I was learning about the mental health, knowing that we gave it in the fall and usually it's in the spring, is I would wonder how mental health varies throughout different times of the year. Without data points, no way to really know that, but I would suspect that mental health might be the worst in the spring, right at the end of both, because of the end of winter, but also just increased pressures of school. And, again, just something I was kind of considering as like, oh, maybe that's part of why sometimes it's been higher in the past, or if it were to go up again in the future when we switch to the spring, I would just wonder with the time of the year, how that might affect mental health. And then my other thought was just, noticing that the rates are much higher, right, for LGBTQ, those students, and how we could support them. And you guys have already talked about that. So one thing that struck me as I was reading it and thinking about it as a parent is that I would hope my child in the future would be aware so that he can support, and I just wonder about how we can use it, and I don't know in what way to help other students become aware so they become better advocates for each other, rather than just putting it all on those students, but how can their community support them, like their peers? Because I think about bullying and that it's so easy for that to happen and someone to not really realize how important it is that they speak up or they stand up for them, and just even being aware of the experience that their peers are having that they may not, even recognize.
Absolutely. What I will say is I agree. I don't think sort of mental health support needs to be sort of siloed within our sort of clinical staff. So really thinking about what are ways that we can offer professional development for our staff as a whole, to make sure that we're figuring out sort of the best ways to support sort of our more vulnerable students. What's interesting about sort of timing, when we do our signs of suicide screener, it does typically occur in January, and the way those questions, and again, this isn't the YRBS survey, but the way the questions are asked, it's also sort of the same time that students are having, midterms or exams or things like that, and so oftentimes their answers reflect sort of how they're feeling kind of right there in that moment. And so when we do have sort of those one-on-one conversations with students, they'll say, the holidays just ended and now I've got all these, I have all these exams coming up, and so, I do think timing is sort of important. So we are thinking about sort of how can we even change the timeline for even our signs of suicide screener. And then as far as the bullying, we do have the MARC program. That's our anti-bullying curriculum, and our MARC liaisons meet quarterly to really kind of talk about, okay, how relevant and helpful are these lessons? Where do we need to sort of, think about making some changes? And in terms of making sure that students know sort of how to be an upstander, how to, communicate with adults when, something is occurring, especially sort of what's happening sort of online and through sort of cyberbullying. And I know the sort of the different curriculums that are happening at the elementary and the secondary level as it relates to sort of just your sort of digital footprint and all that, they do incorporate sort of cyberbullying as well, so.
Jax?
So, I just wanted to ask, because from a student's perspective, a lot of the time, I've heard throughout the school, regarding the surveys, that people people are always like scared to like answer the truth because there have been like rumors that even when like the surveys say they're anonymous, the school's actually like keeping track of like who's who. 'Cause there have been like rumors that like a student answered like the wrong way and was like pulled aside and like had like an intervention. So I've heard like students say like, oh, make sure you answer this way so they don't talk to you. So I was just wondering, like, is there a way that you account for those like self-report biases?
No, I think that's a really important point, and I do. I think we certainly can account that there are some students that may not be sort of answering sort of, truthfully in these surveys. I will say this year, at least for the rollout of YRBS, one of the changes, positive changes that I think we made, we moved sort of discussion and sort of planning for YRBS to our school wellness committee, and we did have a student representative on that committee, and she did a really wonderful job making a slideshow that was really sort of kind of, just sort of user-friendly, that really kind of outlined sort of what to expect, sort of in just more familiar sort of jargon and language, and really did touch upon that piece around sort of the anonymity of it. I would really love to, moving forward, kind of think about how do we get some student support in that very thing. I can tell you, right, that your answers are anonymous, but it might be nice to hear from a peer. I can assure you, as a member of the school wellness committee, these responses are anonymous. So just getting sort of more sort of stakeholder participation, I think, would be important, and to address your concern. Yeah.
Thank you. Good question. Mr. Exum.
I want to go back for a moment to the participation rates, because anytime that you're trying to think about what you should do about data that you receive, it's really important that you feel that you have reliable information in the first place. And so by just a quick calculation, it looks like we had about 66% participation at the middle school and 59% participation at the high school. So that's also a lot of students who are not responding to this survey. And of course, we're all accustomed to surveys of seemingly impossibly small numbers of people that yet somehow predict like statewide outcomes. But that's like really carefully designed to get representative samples. And obviously, we're not doing anything like that here. We're just hoping to get as many people as possible, and we get who we get. But I don't know that I have a solution to this, because while keeping it anonymous in this way, it's not as though we can use information we already know to try and representatively sample the populations. But I do sometimes look at some of this data and just wonder how specifically reliable some of, especially when we get down to like small details of percentage changes, that just a couple of students here and there can really swing things, especially when you're dealing with small subgroups in the first place. Mm-hmm. I guess it's not really, again, it's not something that has like an easy answer to it, or I'm saying therefore just throw out this survey because we can't rely on it, because we certainly don't know that either. And obviously for the people who did respond, this is the information they provided, and that's all real and important information. But I don't know, I do like trying to think about these things with a little bit of caution as well, that we have to just remember that there's a lot of responses that aren't captured here, and so everything is not necessarily exactly what we see. Question-wise, I have a few specific things. I think that in some of the places where it's already been mentioned, of course, that there are a whole bunch of places where gender diverse students and LGBTQ students are having significantly more depression and less likely to have someone that they can go to outside of school. I think those are understandable in ways that some of them are a little bit more curious. So I was wondering especially about the getting less physical activity, because that was also something that was flagged as being statistically significant, and also getting less sleep. And so I was wondering if there are ideas about what might be the reason for that.
I honestly, I don't have an answer yet, but that is something that I would like to obviously take a closer look at. As it relates to physical activity, sort of what are the barriers? Is there, are things that we're not offering? Is access an issue? I would be curious also to kind of do a deeper dive and try to understand how does Wilmington compare to, similar districts as it relates to that. I think we have really nice partnerships, with surrounding towns where we can really have conversations about what's working well for you, and share information. So I think my initial sort of, answer would be I really want to sort of take a look at this data as it compares with other towns. How can we sort of, collaborate and share information as a start? And again, using our representative from Safe and Supportive Schools to also kind of help us, interpret this data as well would be helpful.
And I'll just throw out at least one idea that I had about the physical activity, which is that I wonder if some students don't feel as comfortable going out for sports. That trying out, playing on sports teams may be something that does not feel as welcoming or comfortable to some students as to all of them.
Sally, do you want to add to that? Yeah.
Just piggyback on that, in the research we did 2 years ago, looking at equity data and looking at participation in athletics on our teams, there was definitely a discrepancy there.
Sure.
And anecdotal comments from students as to just not a comfort level, locker room situations, things like that.
Yeah.
But we are continuing to do a lot of that equity work currently right now, looking at data and subgroups, and so that is something we can continue to pursue in the other work we're doing as well.
Very good, thank you. Mr. Agnew, back to you.
Good.
You're good, okay. I just wanted to make sure. Dr. Bryson.
I have a question about students with disabilities subgroup. So I'm not seeing anything here. Does that mean we didn't, because the YRBS does include a subgroup for students with disabilities marked by IEPs, I think, in 504. So if we don't see it, does that mean that there was no statistical significance in that particular group?
That's my understanding. I don't know, Becca, if you can speak to that. I think you were really highlighting what was sort of statistically significant, but that is part of the questionnaire, yes.
Yes, so the IEP question specifically is on the survey. We've just historically never provided a breakdown by that question, like a subcategory. We can run one if that would be helpful. And from there, we can mark anything that's statistically significant or not.
Yeah, I think that would be very helpful because I'd be curious to see the mental health pieces in terms of students with disabilities. I think that we might find some interesting pieces there.
Very good point.
Can I ask one more question?
Of course you can.
To Jackson's point about the different surveys we do, the panorama data, Erin, is sort of tracked and used I guess, is there a place where we explain to the students which data we're using it to support you and which data we're using to get a general sense, right? So the YRBS is sort of like, let's get a sense of the district. Mm-hmm. We're not specifically looking at it and going, oh, we need to reach out to that person. Mm-hmm. But the panorama data is like that. I mean, can you just explain that to us, like sort of how that data is a little bit different? Because I wonder if that's part of the issue where they're like, well, wait, because I did this survey once in middle school and then someone came and talked to me, so don't do it here. So I feel like we need to be a lot more clear perhaps. So I'm just curious to your point.
Yeah, no, and sort of the wheels are turning, and I'm thinking about, again, if we have sort of, more student representation in our school wellness, committee, could we even sort of have sort of a discussion about what do each of these, from a student perspective, what do each of these surveys do, what do they capture, and how is that information used, I think would actually be really cool.
Interesting, yeah.
So, of course, Panorama can be used in a variety of different ways, and we really can look at it from a district, district perspective, and I think whenever I've presented Panorama data here, that's what we're really looking at, sort of district-wide, what are the trends, what are we noticing? But Panorama data can be used in a more individualized way. Support plans can be generated based on, Panorama data to sort of figure out what's an intervention that will be useful for that student. groups, when I think about sort of the elementary level, again, I know they're not represented in our YRBS survey, but, that's where sort of, lunch bunches could be created and different sort of, tier 2 interventions. And I think I'm answering your question.
Okay.
Okay.
It's more, I think, for people listening, and I wonder if there's a place on the website, maybe it's already there,
Yeah.
that sort of says, like, this data you would have access to as a parent, and we would use this data to provide support, but this data is not for that. So if your child suggests something on here, we won't know, like, this isn't for that purpose. But I imagine it's quite confusing for students, because you're doing these sorts of things often, and I don't know if it's explained, if they're just sent a link, and I'm sure there's directions, but I
Yes.
bet they go right to the link and they're like, okay, and some of them are thinking, oh, I remember doing something like this in middle school and Miss Dunham came and talked to me. I mean, I don't know, but I wonder if does this sound familiar? I mean, a little bit potentially?
I mean, there is, because like what I was like, when I asked the question initially, there was like a specific student I like had in my mind. Like I remember freshman year, like after like the survey went out, like there was like everyone in like my grade was like, oh, they like pulled, like he was called down to like the counseling office and like they were talking. I don't know if it's true or not, but they talked to him because of like what he said like in the survey. So that's just like where that, because like I remember that
Where it came
specific
from.
student. So yeah.
And again, as these surveys are being sort of, administered in real time, there absolutely are instructions and kind of explanations of sort of what's going to happen next. For the signs of suicide screener, that is the one where, based on responses in real time, there may be sort of an intervention that's happening in the moment before the end of the day to support that student. Fortunately, our signs of suicide screener is not our only, touch point to provide support to our students in need. We have, our counseling staff has tremendous relationships with students, that really sort of, built upon sort of what those results might be. I will say what I really do love about the use of the signs of suicide screener is oftentimes you are really catching and supporting a student that otherwise might not be on sort of, anyone's radar as sort of having any particular acute needs. And so being able to sort of support a student in that moment, and sort of triaging and figuring out, do we need to make referrals? Do we need to, access sort of support at home, is actually pretty powerful. So certainly, I think there definitely are some students that are not going to answer our surveys accurately, but like I said, we have other opportunities to connect with students.
Thank you.
Mr. Kiley?
Another question. I was just wondering, because especially from like the mental health section, and especially like LGBTQ plus and TGD students, have you ever considered like sending this data out to the students as like a debriefing thing? Because like, especially for those two groups, like if they can see that, I don't want to sound like cliche, but if there are students like them in their school who are like going through similar things as them, that it can be like helpful to know that like they're not alone. So I was just wondering, have you ever considered like sending the data out to the students? Because especially like as a student, like we get all these surveys and we're like, oh, another one. Like we don't even know, most students like don't know what's even like done with the data collected. So I have.
No, I think that would be a really creative idea. And again, I would really like to think sort of, again, sort of in the most sensitive way possible, how to share information such as this, that really kind of leads us to a place of what are we going to do next. I will say, and Becca, please correct me if I'm wrong, but my knowledge is that what is reflected in Wilmington is sort of what is sort of reflected sort of as a larger whole. Is that correct in saying that sort of mental health or TGD and LGBTQ, you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
That's reflected nationally.
Yes, in all the surveys that we do, we see similar results across sexual orientation and gender identity subgroups.
Mr. Turner?
Fantastic suggestion. One quick thought that was sparked by Dr. Bryson's question about students on IEPs and with other disabilities is, I know for purposes of the survey, we want to break things out into narrower groups so we can have good information as to who's responding. But particularly with race, where almost all of the individual groups other than white are small enough on their own that they're too small to be considered, where you don't want to say it's statistically significant if there's a result for that group. It's below 10%, for example. I know there's a wide diversity of experiences, a wide diversity of situations across those different races, but would it be possible for checking for statistically significant results to regroup them as white and non-white to say, okay, if there was, say, mental health was particularly acute in that broader group, I know it wouldn't be quite the precision we're looking for, but it would at least highlight another place where we might want to think about our student population, particularly if there is something that's highlighted and there is a significant concern in any one of these sorts of topics that we go through. It would at least give us another way to look at the information. Perhaps you can do that on your own with the more detailed information. It's not something we necessarily need to see here today for us, but I feel like there's an opportunity there as another way to look at the data, where sometimes you want to split it into smaller groups for really important reasons, but to get good context, sometimes bringing them back together could be useful perhaps.
Absolutely. And, I assume Becca will be open to working with me to kind of just understand exactly sort of statistically what you're looking for as it relates to, certain groups, yes.
Just going back to the discussion about the 60 minutes a day of activity, I similarly thought, if students are in sports, they're likely getting that. So the students not are probably, or students not in a sport, right? So I think about also, just the higher rates you were talking about, EQ students and that. I just wonder about, if you're in a sport, you're active, but when that sport stops, or if you're not competitive, do students struggle to figure out how to be active, right? Because it's still an important part of life, and all of us have a moment when our sports end and right, have to take that on. So I wonder about offering non-competitive ways to encourage them to get out and be active, anyone? And to me, what comes to mind is going for a walk outside, because it's right, that activity, but I also just think it's good for mental health as well, right? To be outdoors or in nature. So that was just a thought or an idea I had, is that like a group or club that goes for a walk outside every day, something like that, and just to encourage that. And is that something that maybe we could consider? I don't know if it's happening already also.
Yeah, I think about, not that, and certainly I can have, conversations, with our athletic director about sort of, again, what is really being offered that, you're right, is non-competitive and non-gendered, to be perfectly honest with you. And, would we have to introduce such things sort of more in a club format, because those typically are run sort of year-round. So absolutely, I think it's something, it's really worthwhile to consider.
Just have one more.
Please.
For the high school participation, was it given during Flex Block or, yes, I'm sorry, I missed that. And so it was given at the same time across the whole school?
Yes.
And then this was the participation rate?
Yes.
So that means that we were sitting there doing it and some just weren't doing it?
Correct.
Okay. Sorry, I'm just trying to wrap my head around that. Huh. And at the middle school, it was during?
Advisory.
Yeah. And I will say, I was very present during the middle school, sort of the rollout of the survey. And again, I just think, I think middle school students are more inclined to, okay, you told me to do this and I'm going to do it. And I think we were anticipating that might look a little bit different at the high school level. And again, as I mentioned before, these are lower numbers than we've seen in terms of participation in the past. So I really would like to think about what did we do differently this time that may have impacted, the decrease in participation.
Great, thank you.
Anybody else? Closing thoughts, Erin, Becca, thank you for being here. Any closing thoughts from JSI?
No, just to thank you so much for being flexible with me not being there. And it's really great to present to you all. And I'm excited by everyone's enthusiasm and engagement with the data. We really think this is important work. And I just also want to just shout out to Erin. She's been wonderful throughout this whole process and is a great advocate and champion for this type.
Great. Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay, so I think, thank you. Maybe perhaps it seems like there's a theme here that knowing that this is an every other year survey, a year from now, maybe we can sort of update where we're at and what we're doing and how it's looking.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks again, Becca.
Thank you all. Bye.
Good night. If there is no objection from the committee, because Erin's already here, I'd like to take the agenda out of order and go to our item of old business and do the cell phone update so that she doesn't have to stay here all night.
She was so looking forward to staying.
Hearing no objection, Erin, if you'd like, you could present the cell phone working group update.
I'm comfortable presenting now. That is fine. I just want to thank the committee for the opportunity to facilitate this working group, not just sort of for phase 1, but for phase 2 as well. It really was a tremendous learning experience for me, and I really just appreciate all the support from stakeholders. I think everyone did some really hard work. We have met many, many times, and I think worked as a really strong, cohesive unit. So I just wanted to thank everyone who was a part of this group. So just kind of giving a little bit of background, in November of 2024 is when we sort of initially started a working group to really help develop expectations and policies regarding sort of cell phone use in our schools. We had representation from all stakeholders, parents, students. Jackson was part of our phase 1 working group. We had administrators on the committee as well as school committee liaisons. And so we worked really hard to sort of kind of break up understanding cell phone use into sort of 4 different categories. We administered surveys to staff, students and caregivers, and made some recommendations sort of towards the end that really reflected sort of trends that Massachusetts legislation was going towards. In November of 2025, I'll say reconvened, because all of the parents that were represented on the group were part of our phase 1 group as well. We also had 3 administrators, again, continuing with the same school committee liaisons. We had 5 student representatives from the high school level, as well as, Wilmington Public School staff. What we really started to do was think about, how do we take the data that we collected in our survey and really kind of think about that from an implementation policy standpoint. Again, really keeping in mind what current research was showing us, as well as, really kind of keeping our eye on, what the state overall was looking for as it relates to legislation around cell phone use in schools. We really started off thinking about what are the districts that have adopted a bell-to-bell policy, meaning that, there's no cell phone use from sort of the start of the day to the end of the day. What was working well for them, what were challenges that they experienced along the way. Really wanted to take a deeper dive into really thinking about what our media literacy curriculum sort of looks like and could look like. If we are going to do a policy change, what are we doing sort of alongside to support our students in sort of their understanding and knowledge of what is safe and appropriate cell phone use, or just sort of digital literacy as a whole. We pretty quickly got to a place where we were exploring the use of what's called the doorman application. And essentially what it is it's a means to block student access to social media applications, messaging, notifications, and websites during academic time. This is an application that was piloted in a handful of Massachusetts schools. within this academic year. Watertown High School being sort of the district that piloted the application. So we had conversations with representatives from Doorman to really kind of just understand sort of the nuts and bolts of the application, how it's being used, anything from, sort of day-to-day use, staff involvement, ease of use, as well as just sort of really wanting to understand sort of privacy and all of that. We had the principal of Watertown High School join one of our committee meetings to really sort of, just do a really honest kind of Q&A of again, what's working, what do you like about it, what's the sort of student and staff response. There were separate conversations with the assistant principal of Westfield High School where this application was also, administered in February of this year. And we sort of, as this was sort of happening, there was also several conversations with Heather Peachy, who is our North Intermediate School and Wildwood Early Childhood Center librarian, and Amber Skate, the high school instructional technology specialist, to really kind of understand what's already happening as it relates to our digital literacy curriculum. Both have a really strong passion for making sure that our students are getting a lot of support and learning as it relates to media literacy here in school. How that translates to outside of school, and really kind of looking at what's happening on the elementary level and on the secondary level. It's really quite impressive what they have been able to kind of create, grassroots on their own. So kind of bringing us to sort of recommendations. I feel like the group really was recommending a strong consideration and eventual implementation of the Doorman application for grades 6 through 12. It really would be a very strong technological solution as it relates to a potential cell phone ban. Coincidentally, sort of as our group was wrapping up on April 8th, the Massachusetts House approved a bill that would require a bell-to-bell ban on cell phones in Massachusetts public schools. We very quickly connected with Doorman representation to find out, okay, what do we do, right? If this is something that is implemented, could we still move forward with this application? And the answer is absolutely yes. It would be a more cost-effective intervention than using pouches, which are much more expensive. And there's been sort of, information that's already been collected about how those are sort of being misused and destroyed by students. Additionally, it would reduce the amount of, interventions that maybe staff or administrators might need to do in terms of sort of asking students to put phones away, and sort of having to do sort of any discipline as it relates to that piece. Additionally, sort of using the application versus having students turn in their phones means that we, as buildings, are not sort of now responsible for students' personal property, which also has risks involved as well. And so the idea would be to pilot the use of this application at the start of the 2026-2027 academic year. Again, with the idea of this being in grades 6 through 12. As part of sort of that rollout, we would want to be very thoughtful of making sure that we're doing a strong community outreach about why this is happening, why this is important, really referencing what students and caregivers have already shared with us as it relates to what they're looking for sort of, what they want for their sort of students, and access to cell phones, especially if there were to be an emergency or something like that. Doorman is committed to making sure that our staff are, adequately trained in the use of the application, and would be a presence, in our buildings as we're rolling this out. in addition, to kind of go back to sort of that digital literacy curriculum piece, in my, conversations, again, with the two Wilmington staff members, we started to do a lot of exploration around what would be curriculums at no cost, as well as ones that, would come at price, and which ones would be better. Right now, my recommendation would be to strongly consider the curriculum through Common Sense Media, which just happens to be the no-cost option. It has really been, kind of the foundation of what already exists for our media literacy curriculum. It is very frequently updated with sort of new research and things of that nature. Common Sense Media also has a family and community outreach program that we could have certain staff be a part of and then curate, whether it be, different opportunities, lessons, and things like that that we could roll out to families. I would love to see sort of on an ongoing basis throughout the academic year. So these two things are happening simultaneously.
Before we go to questions, to our esteemed school committee colleagues who served on this working group, anything that you'd like to add? Let's go first.
I think that just to get into just a tiny bit more detail of how it actually works, because I think that kind of helps frame it, is that essentially this is an application that gets installed on the phone, and it has strong privacy connections. It's not collecting any data. I know that at Watertown, they had a policy that if families didn't want to put the software on their phone, then those phones would be turned in at the beginning of the day. So there were a small number of students whose families didn't want to install the software, and so those phones were just turned in at the main office in the morning when they came to school. But for those using the application, essentially the idea is that you tap what they call like kind of tapping in, but it's not literally a QR code, but it's equivalent of that basically you have like these little cards, like credit card sized cards, and you can have them on individual classrooms. So if you were doing the system so that it was just supposed to be active during class, but you could use your phones during lunch or passing periods, you would have those available on classroom doors so that students entering the classroom would basically tap their phone against this, it activates, and then it becomes more or less inoperable as far as using, you're not gonna be using Snapchat at that point in class, and it just sets it as a timer. So for example, it could just be set for 72 minutes, and then after 72 minutes, it just turns off. You set it for whatever the length of a class is. If we're doing the entire day, then that might be more, we might not need it at every classroom. So depending on if this bill gets through and approved, reconciled in the Senate and signed by the governor, then that might be something more about you have to tap in at the start of the day when you enter the school building, and then it's just off for 6.5 hours, whatever the case may be. But that's essentially how it works. And there is the ability for any student to essentially get out of that mode. So there's basically kind of like a release button, more or less, that can be used in emergencies, or honestly, it can be used for anything, but then the school knows. So if you're in class and you basically get yourself out of the lockdown mode, then the school knows about it and is going to basically say, hey, what are you doing? What's going on there? And, repeated non-compliance would have to lead to some kind of like, well, now you have to turn in your phone because you keep doing this. But that's essentially the way that the application works.
That's all. Thank you. Nick?
Yeah, Mr. Ragsdale captured it really well. I just want to re-up what Erin was saying, thanking all the parents for being involved, and especially the students too, who, shared their perspective on this and trying to really emphasize for us, the adults, how they're trying to grow into adults with regard to cell phone use and why it's so important that we connect the actual programming and education about broader device use. And frankly, I was wanting to connect to the prior presentation about the data, right? You can see that connection, kids staying up wicked late on their phones. I do that, stay up way too late on my phone. That certainly there's a connection there. So hopefully with this program in the schools and then with the curriculum we're gonna apply, we can get at a broader kind of holistic set of concerns. So, great, thank you.
Mr. Turner, Dr. McCauley.
So I do have a fair number, and I apologize for for the number of comments or questions. So first of all, thank you very much for clarifying the company. If you go down the rabbit hole of who the software provider is, you actually get to the wrong company. There's two different companies with Derivative LLC as a name. The other company is not someone I necessarily thought we would want to be doing business with. I do have a really strong concern about the privacy side of it. Once we've loaded an app on the students' phones, it's there. The terms, I really think we need to see their license agreement and know exactly what it says when they make an update, when they make a new release. Does any of their licensing terms change? Are their licensing terms perpetual for the length of the time the app is on the phone? Or is it only for the year? I really have a very strong concern about telling all of our students, load this app on your phone. And then software companies can change their terms. Unless you explicitly have the contract and understand what they can and can't do and what their liability is if a third party they work with. A lot of software has open source or third-party code in it. We need to understand all of that at a very detailed level. I have a very strong concern that we would tell students to load an app on their phone and then find out 2 years down the line that data was being exported for whatever purpose. It may sound benign, but I have very strong concern with that. The quote is for $3,300. That's actually for 600 students. If we want to do both the middle school and high school, it would be about $7,000. That's for Mr. Simons, who's not here. So the budget amount is more. I really greatly applaud anything we can do on media literacy. I think the rollout side to both parents and students is going to be really important. If there's not buy-in, this is not going to work. Obviously, having the state say we need to do this helps a lot. Mm-hmm. And then the last piece about this is I don't mind being an early adopter, but this app is really new. And we may not be the first adopter, but I struggle, especially considering how wide this topic is across the country, thinking that there isn't somebody slightly more established who has a bit more of a track record. It's great that we talked to Watertown, but I do worry about being the second, third, fourth district to adopt this and roll it out, that we're going to be guinea pigs for lots of bugs with the software. There were some reports of the software updates every day, and you have to reboot your phone every day, and exaggerated when students and parents say every day. It may not be every day, but updates all the time. And because it's newer, they're trying to make it better, which I get from the software company's perspective, but giving people a reason to be upset with it because of the nature of new software doesn't help the rollout and implementation and adoption. So I appreciate that it's really clear that the group thinks this is the best option. I'm just concerned about the maturity of the software and the maturity of the company. It appears to be a rather small company. So I said a lot, and I appreciate, certainly on the contract side, I would want Andy to have a look at it and really help us understand the life of the contract and their liability if there's any data. Because once you have an app on your phone, it can do a lot of things.
I don't know if I can jump in here, but any software company that a school contracts with has got to sign a student privacy agreement in order to be compliant with the Federal Education Right to Privacy Act. So we do that with everybody from our SRS system to Panorama to what have you. So that would be put in place here. The only other option out there is to buy Yonder bags, which would be about 10 times more expensive or something similar to them. Or tell people they can't bring phones to school at all. At least based on what the law is looking like at this point. So the Yonder bags are more expensive. They are more cumbersome to have people put things in bags and lock them up and what have you. And if there was an instance where there was some sort of emergency, you have kids walking around with basically what's known as a Faraday bag and they can't use their phone, where this, you could actually turn off the phones if there was some reason to turn them off. So it definitely is an improvement over the old systems. You know, I mean, do they have it completely, I mean, I'm sure the updates had to do with the other social media companies updating their gaps and what have you. So they've got to update to keep pace with them. But it's less labor intensive on your school staff. And you do have, God forbid that there was some reason why you wanted to release that piece where kids could use their phones and get a hold of people. You could just do that with a touch of a button.
Sorry. First of all, I'm not suggesting yonder bags.
Yeah.
And part of where this is also coming from is whatever makes it the simplest for teachers to administer.
Yeah.
I don't want to add burden to them, but I do find it shocking considering Massachusetts is not the first state. We're well down the line of states that have done this, that there isn't other software options, good ones, or not so good, more proven. And this may be the best solution, and it may get there and may show it in the next 2 or 3 years or whatever, but I'm surprised that there aren't other companies that have jumped into this, because clearly there's going to be a lot of business.
This, I believe, is the first software company to do it. The rest have all been physical blocks.
That's fascinating.
I mean, there probably will be more, so it might be a 1 year or a 2 year contract, and maybe there's something maybe there's doormat later on, who knows? But, but this is the first one out there, so, at least that I'm aware of.
Thank you. Mr. Turner,
I'm good, thank you. I apologize for.
no, you're
No?
good. Dr.
Yeah.
Crowley.
No, I think that's raised some really great points about software and the terms and conditions and everything, and how companies can change things. So
Agreed.
definitely something to keep an eye on. So thank you for putting this forward. Just one suggestion before I go into questions. I did ask for a kind of the proposal demo video beforehand the meeting, and I found that very helpful. I was thinking maybe it could be good to send that to the committee, because I get the memo here showing it, but as someone who's not been in this was really hard for me to really kind of follow and understand everything that's going on. And then I think we owe it a benefit to the public to kind of put some of this information out there too. So my first question is going to be how will applications being deemed acceptable be decided for use? So a concern I have is that Chrome or any web browser will be allowed for access, and students will just access everything they want through the browser. So kids watch YouTube Shorts on their Chromebook through the browser in school.
Yeah.
How is that going to be prevented with the phone?
Well, with so you're talking about sort of access through by way of the Chromebook as opposed to your personal device?
I mean, if I have my cell phone,
Yeah.
I fight this battle at home. My kids, we don't allow any social media on their phones, right?
Mhm.
But they find YouTube Shorts on, they go through, the Chrome browser, and then they can access other stuff through just any browser that they have.
So by way of the application, we as a district can sort of decide what are applications that we want to block. So we would have some sort of say over that. I mean, it will never be sort of a catch-all, and I do think our students are incredibly savvy, articulate in sort of figuring out where the workarounds are. And so there may be points where we are going to be one step behind as it relates to that. And I think that's sort of happening already, to your point. I think we are sort of moving in a direction where we're sort of trying to minimize the amount of sort of Chromebook usage that is sort of happening during academic time. My understanding is sort of part of that does relate to sort of just AI and how that can play a factor. And so what are we doing to either sort of, lock down certain access to browsers, or moving to kind of pen and paper. I mean, those things are happening right now anyway. So I don't know that I have the best answer to your question.
Yeah.
But I think it is absolutely something, that we would really want to take a look at for us as Wilmington. What would be the applications we would want to block? And, really trying to be as much ahead of sort of, what are the savvy workarounds to what is already existing.
Mr. Axel, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think that the general idea would be that the default is certainly that nothing is allowed. It's just like that when you're in the classroom or generally in school, again, depending on how we have to implement it, that the phone is just kind of generally inoperable. And if we did want to use it for some kind of educational purpose, we would have to develop some sort of procedure. I think essentially a teacher would more or less talk to the principal and some version of that, because it would have to be controlled centrally and say, like, I would like to use this application in my class for this purpose. I can't really imagine that we would ever just say, oh, and just unlock the browser. Because first of all, it's like anything that you just need a general browser for, that would be on the Chromebook.
Yeah.
And I also want to just kind of acknowledge, because I'm sure that, people thinking of this table, and of course people at home, that it's like we fully understand that as long as the students have Chromebooks, that there are going to be ways essentially to kind of circumvent part of what these policies are designed to accomplish. It's like we already know that like kids jump in the same Google Doc and they just chat to each other in a Google Doc and so forth. That's happening now, and as long as we're still using Chromebooks in the classroom, even if the phones are not not being accessed, then that's something that can still happen unless we approach that part of it differently. So these are never going to you can't plug all the holes. But it is there is still a pretty big difference between what people are doing on their phones versus just even when they are chatting with each other on a Chromebook.
Before we go back, Dr. Thompson.
Yeah, there are filters on the web access in the schools. Now I don't know how it's set up when they take their school Chromebooks home and they're using your network, but in the schools, they cannot access everything. So even if they're using the Chrome browser and they try to go to Facebook, they would not theoretically get to that within the school. Now, there are ways to send every single, and I've done it in other districts, every single district back through our server. So even if they're using our Chromebooks, they still can't use them any way they want to. But even if they go on their home network, because you have a virtual private network, basically that is the school network that goes there, it kind of slows things down a little bit. But I don't know exactly how it's set up, and Angel hasn't answered my text yet, but basically, but that's basically how it would work. In school, they would not be able to access those things that are not whitelisted, as they say.
Yeah.
Show my tech savvy, thank you. But there's always going to be a technological arms race where the kids are finding workarounds to things, and it's going to be a little bit of a constant, but that's kind of how you would make sure that they weren't, at least in school. But at home, and this is the thing, at home, when the cell phones, and this comes to the digital literacy and the responsibility piece, we have these very powerful computers in our kids' pockets, and there's no limits on them, and they can access all sorts of stuff, and I know it's going to be shocking, but they don't always, they don't always tell their parents the truth. Oh, here's my Snapchat account, but it's not the one that I actually use, so they play cat and mouse with that sort of thing as well. So, wait a minute, just in from our tech director. We do block any social media in our network for this. For the second question, yeah, you'll have to look into it, but yeah. So all the social media is blocked if they're using our network in school.
Okay.
But you can, there are filtering, like GoGuardian is what I've used in the past, where those are on our Chromebooks, and if a kid is searching at home something that, suicide or whatever, we get a ping. I'm not sure that we actually have that here, but that might be something that we look at doing as well.
Thanks.
If I could just sort of comment too, I think on a positive note, as a member of the leadership team, we do pretty routine walkthroughs in all of our buildings.
Yeah.
And the walkthroughs that we do at the, middle school and high school level, I really don't think that I have encountered, multiple classrooms where I've gone in and there has not been really strong engagement from sort of, students and staff.
Yeah.
I rarely have seen, classes where I've walked in and students are solely sort of working independently on a Chromebook. I know that this is just a snapshot, but I feel compelled to share it because just being in the classrooms, I'm not seeing sort of that sort of just level of distraction that's truly impacting a student's ability to learn and engage. So I just wanted to.
Yeah, and if I can actually piggyback that, because I do site visits in every building, pretty much every single month, and they are not using their Chromebooks all the time in a classroom. There is a variety of activities, and using the Chromebook is usually some sort of practice or something, or an individual personalized instructional piece that the kids are using. I mean, the one time you might walk into a classroom and see the classroom set up with Chromebooks would be some sort of assessment that they're doing. But the Chromebooks are not used by all kids all the time, and nothing else is happening in the classroom. There seems to be this ulterior conversation that's going on about what happens in classroom, and that's not. They have station rotations, they're doing writing, they're working in groups, they're working with manipulatives, thank you, all those sort of things, and they're moving around and doing stations, and that's consistent at all, even in the high school. And if they are working in Chromebook, they're working in groups on things. So it's not like the Chromebook is the end-all and be-all. It actually is done pretty well here, so.
Thanks. Yeah, so kind of went a little bit off of the tangent. I think it's been a good conversation. I may suggest for a future topic at school committee meeting is kind of going over how we're using technology in the schools for curriculum and everything, just because there has been research coming out about since Chromebooks were introduced in the mid-2010s, what's happened since then and everything, so it could be a worthwhile conversation, obviously hearing a lot of feedback. So, thank you. My last question is, getting back to the cell phone policy, would be, what's the plan to kind of get this out in front of the community to get feedback and also to implementation? How are we going to teach everyone about this, how this is going on and stuff?
Well, I would suggest, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think this is probably gonna come back to us as an agenda item for a decision rather than an update. Because, I mean, we're basically in May. If we are gonna try to roll this out for this coming school year, we're gonna need to make a decision soon. We're gonna need to implement, do whatever we need to do through doorman. We're gonna have to communicate this to families. We're gonna have to teach the staff, so. This was intended to be sort of a recommendation from the working group. We'll bring it back, if not at our next one, at one of our May meetings to discuss and determine what we want to do.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah. Do you think there could be an opportunity where we can kind of say like some information we would want in order to then make that decision?
Yeah, so I've heard licensing agreements and some other
Yeah.
sort of use cases, but yes, please send it to me,
Yeah.
send it to Dr. Thompson.
Thanks.
We can compile whatever information, either working through Erin or the working group
Yeah.
or Dave. Yes, we can absolutely get answers to those
Okay.
questions before we discuss it for sure.
Okay, great, thank you.
Of course. Ms.
Yeah, sorry.
Ward, and then we'll come back to you, Stephen.
I just wanted to comment, it was great to hear about the digital literacy curriculum part and, whether it's Chromesets meet or whatever, but as a parent of an elementary student, it comes up a lot with parents. We know this is looming ahead of us. And so to get guidance, both for us and our students on that, I think it would be really helpful and just a nice thing that we can offer. So I'm curious, we don't talk about that now, but it's great to hear that and curious to know more about that in the future.
I think, certainly for, cell phone policy, we're talking about sort of the secondary level, grades 6 through 12, but as it does relate to digital literacy and curriculum, I really love to, sort of my vision is to really think about kind of rolling out sort of a parent caregiver like series with various topics, whether it be sort of cyberbullying or sort of, social media 101, just various opportunities for, people to be sort of engaged in sort of what is appropriate use. How does that mirror the curriculum we're already providing to our students so that there is, what's happening at school and being discussed at school is what's, happening and being discussed at home as well, so.
That's great. Yeah, love it.
Sure. Two quick ones, I promise. One quick thing, if you're curious to see a bit more about Doorman, the Watertown Public TV, Community TV, does have a several-minute video. They did a little spot on Watertown's use of it, so you can actually hear some of the comments from the principal and some of their teachers there and some of the students as well. So it's pretty well done. And then to kind of touch on some of the points I harped on earlier, the parent and student engagement and buy-in on this. But we do have a lot of teachers who use the cell phone not frequently or not necessarily pervasively, but use it as a part of their curriculum. You know, we're going to do this game or this survey or this, take a picture of your artwork. And it's a whole lot easier to do that with a cell phone than with trying to hold your Chromebook upside down. So working with the teachers and helping them really understand and plan ahead for any of their curriculum that they've built up over the last few years, you need to change these spots because it won't be a tool you can use anymore. It's extra work for them to get ready for it as well. So being as upfront with them as we can, I think is very helpful and important.
I think just to speak on that piece, a couple things I'm thinking about. One, I mean, as it was described, there is sort of an override option. So, you know, if there was a classroom where it really was necessary that students are using their personal devices, you know, for some part of the curriculum, there would be a way to sort of override that. I'm not sure how that would fall into what might be sort of legislation, but, you know, until that happens, that would sort of be, you know, I think one answer to the question. You know, at least at the middle school level, I'll be honest, I've heard a lot about, you know, the use of cell phones during academic time becomes an equity issue because not all students do have cell phones. And so I think about that. We need to be mindful and sensitive to that. And certainly that could be the case at the high school level too. So yes, I think there would absolutely have to be some conversations about that piece. What I will say in speaking with both Westfield and Watertown is staff felt quite relieved that they no longer felt like they needed to police cell phone use in their classrooms. So there was a real true benefit, you know, to that. Does that outweigh sort of what's being used, you know, during academic time? I'm not sure, but I know sort of there was a real positive response.
Thank you. Anything else, Mr. Iso?
Aaron, am I remembering correctly also that the phone is actually not disabled by the application during class?
Correct.
So actually it does still make and receive phone calls. I think the idea is sort of being like, that's not the problem in schools. The problem is not that students are taking calls in the middle of class. And it's kind of hard to hide that as well.
Right.
So it really is more about like the applications and social media and texting otherwise. I also do want to point out that I think that right now the way that the current bill is written probably would not permit, you know, whitelisted apps during class. It doesn't seem to have provisions for that, at least at the moment. It's kind of just like, nope, they can't have access. So if it goes through in its current form, then that's going to sort of just take that out of the conversation.
Mr. Gold?
I just want to say, kind of tangential with that, VPN, I'm surprised we don't do that already. I'm sorry that I don't know that.
I don't.
We should have a separate conversation. We should come back and have a
I'm
separate
on a different network so that, you know, when
all the students should have to VPN back to the school district server so that.
that very well might be the case. I'm not sure. I haven't.
Well, that's hard to do though, because we have, the families own the Chromebooks. And they're managed, they're generally, most of them are managed by us, but they're not owned by us. And so that limits what we can do.
Anything else before we let Erin go home after what I'm sure was a long day? 15 more questions.
Actually, I do just want to add that I think this is going to Dr. McCauley's part, that I think we need to get information about this out to the community, you know, sooner rather than later. Like if we can start to put together an FAQ, I think we need to give the community an opportunity to, not necessarily like a public forum, although I guess that could also be a possibility, but like people are going to have questions.
Sure.
And we need to, you know, potentially have answers. And it's not going to be good enough just to say like, well, you know, the state's making us, so don't complain to us. Like we're choosing the implementation that we use. And if we're doing this rather than something different, then we need to explain why and be ready to gather their feedback and concerns and be ready to address it.
Sure. Absolutely.
Don't tell Mr. Simmons that I suggested this, but the group we hired for the school building project that did the videos updates did a really good job and was relatively cheap. And it might be most efficient to have a 30 to 60-second video So we could convey a lot of information and then have a few links at the end of it to lead to the FAQ.
Do you mean the cartoon EDU videos
Yes.
for the
Yes.
elementary school?
I
Dave Cartoonin?
I think we have one. I think it was shared with
Yeah.
Dr. McCauley and wasn't,
there's a video.
we didn't share it to the rest of the committee, but we do have something we can share.
Okay, cool, thank you. Yeah.
Any final thoughts?
No, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Have a great rest of your night.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, back to new business. Item B, planning for school committee reorganization. This is informational, so you will all recall and remember at the second regular school committee meeting after the spring election, which, by the way, congratulations to Dr. Bryson and Dr. McCauley. Welcome back. Happy to have you. We do our essentially leadership reorganization. We elect a chair, a vice chair, and a secretary. So we will be doing that at our next meeting on May 13th. And then the second meeting in May, we will do our subcommittee discussion and reorganization. You will recall that in your shared drive, there's the folder that says, school committee meeting packet, whatever it says. If you scroll all the way down to the bottom, it is where lives the list of subcommittees, what they are, who's on them, what we're currently serving on now. So between now and the end of May, I would request that you familiarize yourself with that list. Any questions, thoughts you might have, but we will reorganize subcommittees at the second meeting in May, and we will do our leadership reorganization at the first meeting in May. Questions? Okay. We are going to postpone item C, the 25 end of year report audit, because Mr. Simmons is under the weather and he was excused for the evening, which will bring us to first read of some policies. I suspect I'm going to turn this over to Mr. Ragsdale.
All right, so we have, I guess, 7 policies here to take action on that the policy subcommittee reviewed at our last meeting. And I can just kind of run through kind of what our recommendations are and more or less what the basic changes were. So the first one, ADF, the School District Wellness Program. This was one that was actually brought to us by Ms. Brown because there were certain, essentially DESE necessitated changes to the policy that we had in that were consistent with what we were already doing. So there was language about like the having certified, I'd have to pull up the policy in a second, which I will do. On this policy, all the stuff, which was stuff that we were doing, so professional standards for nutrition professionals. So it's about nutrition staff. They'll have required hours for professional learning, and there were standards, 12 hours for directors, managers, and so forth, all of which we were doing, but we didn't have in the policy. And so it was things like that to just, codify that in the policy itself. And then there was also a little bit of discussion about some of the physical education goals, especially at the middle school, as we've talked about when we did the new schedule, we're only offering PE for half the year, but we still thought it was appropriate to at least kind of have some of the goals in to have the activity of every day, even if we're not necessarily getting there. But that was the updates for the wellness policy, which are in red in the packet. For IK, academic achievement, this is a policy that does not exist in the MASC reference manual, and we are recommending removal of it. It is another one of these kind of a little bit weird, very philosophical, and just seemingly unnecessary policies that is also mostly covered elsewhere. I think that most of the value in this policy, which in some areas has to do with parents and guardians being alerted when there are issues with with the student performance, appear in fact the next policy. So this seems covered elsewhere, not in the MASC manual, and objectionable in a few, or not objectionable, but unnecessary in a few ways as well. So we're recommending removal of that policy. For IKAB, this is the student progress. This is what I was referring to, saying that those updates and progress reporting for parents is covered in IKAB, student progress. And we are recommending a small change here which is essentially changing the title. So the title previously and still as in MASC is Student Progress Reports, and Ms. Elliott recommended that we change this name to Student Progress Updates to parents and guardians to separate the idea that these are formal reports like report cards, when most of it is more about just like keeping parents updated about their children's performance. And so we're recommending making that change to the title to Student Progress Updates to parents/guardians. For ILBA District Program Assessments,
Can I
oh,
stop
sorry.
you for 1 second?
Yes, please jump in.
Progress reports is also in the 4th line there. Are we going to remove? School committee also believes that all progress reports must be based upon full information. Are we removing reports there as well?
Don't think we discussed that, but that's worth considering while we're here.
Committee also believes that all progress updates must be based upon full information.
Yeah, probably. To be
It
consistent.
would match the title. That would make sense.
Yeah.
All right, I think that makes sense. So if the committee's in agreement, we'll make that update as well.
I was just going to comment throughout there. There's a couple spots that says reports, so would we consider changing all of those, maybe to updates?
Updates.
I think that makes sense, yep.
All right, I think that makes sense. We'll make
Okay.
a note, and Jen, if you can note that for the minutes.
Good catch. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, and for ILBA District Program Assessments, this is a policy we are recommending for removal. It does not appear in the MASC manual and is based on some kind of conception and terminology that does not connect to anything we're actually doing or seems to be a part of modern education in Massachusetts. Integrated Learning Outcomes Assessment Plans. I don't know if anyone's heard of those ever. So this, again, seems like an outdated policy. I guess once upon a time, this was a thing, but it appears to be no longer. It doesn't match what we're doing in the district. It's not in the MSC manual. Ms. Elliott concurred that we didn't need this policy. So recommending removal of that policy. IMA teaching activities / presentations. This is also a policy that we are recommending removal. This policy is not in the MASC reference manual, and is also, and I think for good reason, because it also is just kind of, I don't know, oddly philosophical and educational climate shall be established, which shall be conducive to rational thought, inquiry. It's not really a policy. It's kind of a philosophical statement. In any case, it just, some of the wording, maybe one way to put it is, some of the wording is very unusual and odd, and I think it would need to be reworked if we wanted to keep it, but there doesn't appear to be much value in keeping it. And again, MASC, it does not have this as a policy in their reference manual. So, right, and again, with our, we talked about when we first started regularly reviewing policies, that broadly speaking, we're looking to reduce the number of policies that we have in the manual if there doesn't seem to be, strong value in keeping them. They have to earn their place. And so 3 strikes and we think this one is out.
David, before you go on.
I'm sorry to do this because after that statement, I feel badly, but IK, I don't think we wanted to delete it. Because our comment to Christine was, what do you think? It's not in MASC, but we like it. Maybe a title change, please add your thoughts. So I think that we probably want to bring this one back to the policy subcommittee. Because I think there were parts of it in our meeting that we were like, oh, actually this is helpful, and it doesn't quite get covered in the other one. The other one's a bit more vague, and this sort of says like, yeah, well, if your child isn't making progress, then you should be in touch. I think that's probably, and that's not quite covered in that other one, so I'm not sure we should delete. I think we should probably revisit it in light. I don't think we went back to Christine's comment, so is that okay?
I mean, we can. I mean, when we discussed this, I think we ended up not liking, I mean, it would have to be, again, to me, this needs to be reworked.
Yeah, I
If
know.
we were going to keep it. I mean, some of the things in here, for example, insofar as possible, distinctions will be made between a student's attitude and his academic performance. I don't know, that feels to me just like a weird statement to have in the policy manual. And there are sort of a number of things like this, including the specificity of at least 3 times a year they'll be informed regularly. I mean, is that report cards? Because that's a different policy where we have policies on report cards. I mean, I'm happy for us to take a second look at it if you really want to, but I'm still comfortable with the recommendation to remove it. There was, the other issue we discussed during the committee was about, in point 5, about appraisal of the student's standing in relation to his or her peers.
Right, that was what Christine
And that
would
was, and that
comment
was
on,
what,
yeah.
what Ms. Lilly was commenting on, that just like, well, teachers are not going to be comfortable, presenting some kind of ranking of their students compared to other students in the class.
Okay, I guess I would just want to bring, I guess number 2 is I just want to make sure that that's somewhere else. Parents, guardians will be alerted and conferred with as soon as possible when a child's performance, I probably would remove attitude, becomes unsatisfactory or shows marked or sudden deterioration. Like, I would want to make sure that's somewhere else in our policy.
I mean, really, that, if it's not there sufficiently, it should be in student progress update. So maybe we need to take that idea and make sure that it's
Yeah.
in IKAB.
Yep, okay.
If that's not quite covering it.
It should, it's covered in different words, and maybe this needs to be altered, but the third paragraph down on IKAB, in addition to the periodic reports, parents will be notified when a student's performance warrants attention. It's getting to the point, it's not, so maybe those two pieces of language could be merged and kept in the one policy instead of it.
Maybe wordsmith the other piece.
Well, at the risk of cutting anybody's conversation off, I would suggest that rather than
Sorry.
going through it now, that we should probably just send it back to the subcommittee.
Sorry. Thank you.
All right, so we will take policy IKAB back into the subcommittee to incorporate what we think is valuable in
IK.
IMA, I mean, in,
IK, I think, right?
It was IK and IKAB, yep.
Sorry about that.
And
I
IK.
should have caught that sooner.
I think we left off on IMB.
all right, so we're next up, we have IMB, teaching about controversial issues. And we mostly just did a little bit of cleanup on this. So it was mostly just a little bit of just kind of editorial editing and matching it to the MASC policy with one change, which is that there were some language in the MASC policy that talked about outside groups and even outsiders. And we thought that was just slightly odd language. So we changed that to non-school groups, which seemed to be like what they were basically trying to get across, that you have things in school, and if anyone not from the school is going to, for example, be invited to speak or as a presentation or something. So we changed to non-school groups rather than outsiders, but otherwise it was just mostly a little bit of just rewording and editorial cleanup and matching MASC.
Mr. Golden?
So this one is really strange to me at my first glance. I'm honestly kind of shocked that we even have it, because first of all, it doesn't define controversial issues, which is wild to me. Not that you could define it, right, in a document like this. Like, for example, this kind of imagines this scenario where the bio teacher has someone in to talk about, like is evolution controversial? Like, would we have someone come in and say that evolution isn't real? Or like vaccines? It seems a little, I almost think we should just get rid of that whole first until student-initiated forums or student-initiated gatherings, and then keep that stuff about, no allowing someone on a campus to distribute literature, et cetera, and then you can have someone come in at the principal's discretion. But I can't even imagine what scenarios this is trying to get at in the first place. Like maybe it's like affirmative action in a history class, but without a definition, a teacher could reasonably say, oh, well, like, we did civil rights, so now we have to talk about like whether like race-blind housing policies are cool or not. It's just, right? Like, I know that probably wouldn't happen, but the level of kind of scrutiny we apply to other policies and kind of detail-oriented nature of that, I kind of, again, I'm grasping at why is this here? So I think at minimum it should go back, but my colleagues may disagree.
Go ahead, Mr.
I think that part of what this policy is getting at, and this came up a little bit, not with the relation directly to this policy, but during the discussion of the high school handbook, when we were looking at, or not the high school, not the handbook, the program of studies, when Mr. Gendron was here talking about the program of studies, and I asked him about one of the courses, which was, because they had renamed it to like contemporary issues or something like that, or I can't remember if that's what it is now or what it changed from. But essentially I asked about like, it's like, okay, contemporary issues, that can get kind of heated and, people have very strong opinions. How is that kind of handled? And he talked about how the, teachers are, very good, and it's not just contemporary issues. In fact, that in a lot of areas in the curriculum, there are things that people feel strongly about and that need to be handled with sensitivity and kind of, objectivity and so forth, and described essentially that that's part of the skill of teaching, to be able to handle those types of issues. And I think that's what this policy is getting at. Not trying to define what counts as a controversy, because how could we even define that? And that would change from year to year anyway. It's like things that are once controversial become no longer, and vice versa. So I think it's more about just essentially saying that we're not going to be afraid of controversial issues, but there is a way that we expect our staff and our school in general to handle and address them.
So that is a really good explanation. Thank you. And I like the callback to that class, because that gives me the real concrete example of what this is about. I guess in number 5, maybe that's really the cure to what I'm getting at, which is teachers may invite visitors from outside the schools to give presentations, et cetera, when they offer qualifications and resources not available in the schools. So I guess you'd expect the teacher to be able to conduct this discussion, and if they cannot reasonably do so, which in 99% of cases you'd expect they would be. And then, anyway, I would think it would be probably of merit or positive to have further discussion of this, but the policy subcommittee may disagree, so that's okay.
One thought on this, and I understand where you're coming from, Mr. Golden, and I appreciate for sure that this being more general does allow it to live. If we're super specific, then this policy would have to be revised every 6 months or whatever. I'd be curious to hear Mr. Gendron's thoughts, because this is the level where it's the most likely to have controversial topics discussed at the high school. If he finds, or one of the assistant principals at the high school, any particular part of this not aligned with what they're doing, particularly, and obviously there's a difference between policy and procedure or policy and practice, but if we're particularly out of alignment with what does happen in the high school, it would be good to know why, and then do we change what we're doing, what it says here, or do we review what's happening there, to potentially either direction. So to kind of take that point you're raising, Mr. Golden, should we validate that how close this is to the reality of the situation on a day-to-day basis? Could it be simplified as, I don't know. I mean, I'd also be curious if MASC has thought about revising their version of it anytime soon as well, because sometimes they could be ahead of us on this topic as well. So just a thought. I don't know necessarily that we couldn't approve it as is and say, let's reach out to Mr. Gendron. If something is dramatically different, then we can come back to it. Again, I know the policy committee would love to read them all every 6 months. We'd come back to it again very soon if we needed to. I don't know if that's a compromise on that.
To that point, MASC updated this in 2023, so
thank you.
Fairly recently.
Yeah, that's good to know.
I'm sorry?
You can bring it back.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, I would want to have, I mean, if we're going to bring it back, I would like to have a clearer sense of what we're being tasked to do. Because I'm not sure that I understand what changes
It sounds like,
would be desired.
don't let me put words in your mouth, at least a broad definition of what's controversial.
Actually,
You feel like what's in there has addressed that.
I think we've discussed how it would be too difficult probably to identify that, but I think for me, maybe the crux is that what are the scenarios where a teacher is going to want to do this? And like, maybe that's what we re-examine, is like, when in reality is this happening? And then do we need to have any specific language about that? Because I guess it's like, to leave it at individual teachers' discretion, and look, like, they know how best to teach their students, they're well-trained on this, but I'd like to think that And a lot of that training already covers kind of how to do this, and also, it's just that there's a lot of kind of going rogue potentiality here that concerns me. That's what it is, that we're allowing in this without further language.
Sorry, yes, sorry, yes.
Yeah, so to kind of answer your concern, I think if we try to define what controversial is, you're going to end up not teaching anything, because anything can be controversial. The Holocaust is controversial. Would you say we would want to teach that? Probably not, right? So it's like, the policy here, I think, provides enough dialogue in it, in that whenever something comes up, the proper people will be notified, they'll be discussed and everything. And then, as David kind of really eloquently said, controversial changes on a daily basis, right? So to kind of put in like guardrails, like, well, if this will cause some stress or this anxiety here with this group and everything, this is going to be like a 10-page long document. You know what I mean?
Right, and I'm definitely not saying to define it, nor am I trying to avoid those. I think for me, what I'm getting at is, if you were to discuss it again, I would like to hear more on the teacher use case and when they would kind of invoke this and why, and when they were allowed to, right? Because I just don't see, this never happened in my educational experience, where they brought the two people in to have like a Lincoln Douglas debate in the gym for the kids to watch. That's just kind of, it's just fascinating to me. I just don't get it, I guess.
I don't think that's what this is going over, though, right? That it would be like a debate. It's more if there is nothing that the teachers of school can provide, they can bring outside expert in to talk about something, right? But that outside expert gets vetted by the principal of the administration and everything like that, you know?
I just am, whenever possible, teachers who invite visitors to present one side of an issue will also invite visitors. So the whenever possible, to me, is what's really like, if they pick an issue and they can't find somebody, suddenly you're getting one side. So maybe that's the change, like they must find, if they're gonna do this, they must find someone of the other disposition. You know, I think in practice, what I'm talking about is an extraordinarily rare potentiality, but especially given, recent Supreme Court cases about, what you're allowed to teach kids and what opt-outs they get, et cetera, I think there is probably a change to be found in here, and I'm sorry that I can't come up with it at this current moment. But I think for me, it's like, when is this happening, and what? I would like to hear the real kind of educational purpose of purposefully doing this. And it's like, if you're a history teacher, should you not be equipped to lead this discussion already?
Yeah, probably. So, when you look at the state frameworks in Massachusetts, it definitely is bent towards perspective and taking perspective and offering multiple perspectives. So we have that kind of behind us, and you're right. I mean, it's part of the frameworks. It's part of what we're supposed to be doing. And some of that, depending on where you're coming from, might be controversial, and other people are going, so, I think it's more if you're bringing some of the more charged speakers in and you notify people, and with the mood decision, I mean, we just basically say, these are the books we're going to be reading. Let us know if you have a problem with it, and, you read something different someplace else, so it's, being a little proactive about it. I mean, it does kind of bend towards outside groups, and that's bringing a, sex educator in or something along that line. So that would be something outside group.
Yeah, I guess thank you. And I guess for me,
which schools really aren't doing. Let's get that out there right now, but yeah.
I just would love to hear concrete examples of how this is already used and the benefit that it's creating, because I just don't understand the value add. And it is allowing an individual teacher for whatever they believe, right? Does it whatever side of whatever they believe to, if you could read this and say, cool, I'm gonna bring in someone who's pro this, and then because I tried and I couldn't find the person who was anti that.
But I think the policy tells the teacher they should bring in both, and if they can't, then it's another conversation.
Well, it says whenever possible. That's the crux.
Well,
yeah.
I wonder if we're going to say the same thing.
Line 6.
Now that we're like,
Yeah.
campaign colleagues.
Yeah, line 6.
Well, I actually was not going to go to line 6. I was going to go to this idea. When I read this, I was thinking, this is very clear about a teacher's right to introduce these topics does not include the right of advocacy. Teachers must refrain from using their positions to express partisan points of view. So you can bring in, you can talk about this, but you need to show both. If you can't, then you need to bring in someone who could show that other side. Like, that's kind of how I was reading it, right? So if I'm like, well, this is what I believe, and it's gonna be very difficult for me, then climate change, AI in education, like whatever it may be. The idea is that the teacher, the student shouldn't really know necessarily what direction that teacher is heading in.
So maybe, just to clear, so maybe then all I'm saying is, it's that whenever possible, 2 words. I think it should just be teachers must invite visitors to present both sides. You don't think so?
Whenever possible.
Not at all.
So, go ahead.
Yeah, so if you look at line 6, though, principal has jurisdiction over all this. Okay, so a teacher can't just invite in whoever they want, whenever they want. So 48 hours notice has to be given to the principal. We hire our principals to do principaling, right? Like better word, do their jobs.
Capital P,
To make sure that, things don't go off the rails. If people want to bring in their own personal stuff and push their own agendas and everything like that, right? So that's where I think this policy does have good checks and balances on this, and I think can assuage your concerns around someone wanting to push their worldview on the students and only their worldview. A principal will be there to check that and make sure that doesn't happen and that's in place. And that same goes for the student-initiated forums. The principal has final say over all that, too.
And I guess to cap it then, I think this discussion has made it such that it probably doesn't need to go back. I think you probably assuage most of my functional concerns, but I guess I have a broader kind of existential question again about like, I don't know why we need to bring people in who are not the teachers themselves or teaching something that is explicitly non-controversial, right? Like, you bring in, have someone come and talk about bugs, or maybe bugs are controversial, maybe that's the problem, right? But like, you have a presentation on it, here's like the evolution of, they bring in a couple cool bugs and they show the kids the bugs and the Shawsheen, and that's great. But I just don't know why we're bringing in these speakers in the first place, I guess.
So,
I don't know. We are in a general sense.
I think, and I'm gonna get the details wrong on this one, but there's a high school teacher at the high school who at some point, maybe consistently, maybe a few times, has invited a woman to speak to the class that's a Holocaust survivor, to bring like real lived experience to that lesson. But I don't know that we are proposing to, because we invited her, to invite a Holocaust denier.
Right.
Right, I think there's like a hang up there. This is infrequent cases that bring sort of real world experience to a classroom lesson is the way I interpret it. Sure. I'm sorry, Mike, you had.
Yeah, I was actually going to give that example, so.
Sorry?
I was going to give that example.
Okay. Mr. Turner.
Clarifying question, and maybe I'm reading the policy wrong, and it could be in the second read that I'm getting this wrong. In section 5, it says teachers may invite outsiders. In section whatever, after requests, towards the bottom, it says no permission will be granted to non-school groups or individuals to make presentations on controversial issues during school hours. Is that only if somebody from the outside asks in? Okay, that wasn't super clear. I was confused as to if the teacher can ask for it, that would theoretically happen during school hours, so that's a little weird, but maybe it's just my misreading it. All right, never mind. I do follow that it would be, I think, educational perhaps for us to hear from Mr. Gendron. If this is never used, okay. If it's used, how is it used? To your example, maybe that's the best example we have. So yeah, I'd be curious to understand that piece. It doesn't necessarily block us from moving forward with the policy, though.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to reach out to Mr. Gendron and get some background from him on this. If he can provide some examples or some use case. But I think it feels like we're more or less in agreement that we can at least move this to a second read. Yeah. Okay. Good discussion. Thank you. I think there's one more.
Wilmington School.
So, are we going to put IMB on the next agenda for approval, second read and approval.
Yeah, we're gonna put it through a second reading.
And then independently, we would also just like to check in with Mr. Gendron.
That's right.
On that.
That's correct.
All right, and then lastly, we have policy IMG, animals in school. And the current Wilmington policy is kind of hilarious. Long list of all kinds of specificity about animals and bats and furry animals and poisonous things. And we propose to replace that with the current MASC policy, which is much shorter. You get a concise policy that essentially says that having animals in school should be 1, educational, and 2, safe, in a nutshell. Health of students is the primary concern, and there should be educational benefit to any animals that come into school. And the details can be kind of worked out beyond that on a case by case basis. We also did briefly address the idea of comfort dogs. We talked about that during the subcommittee meeting and thought that if that ends up being something Wilmington moves toward, that would be really a separate policy, that's kind of a different thing from what we're talking about. Someone bringing in some, mice to a science classroom, or I don't know, what are animals? Get the petting zoo in for the day, for special, for like the 8th grade celebrations at the end of the year, the field day kind of thing. So if we wanted to go in that direction, then we thought we'd, at that point, we'll consider looking at some model language from other districts that do that. But that essentially, we're just recommending that we adopt the MASC policy here and replace our current policy.
Very good. Mr. Turner, 2 quick things. First of all, thank you again to the policy subcommittee. This is an amazing amount of work you guys are doing this year. It's really impressive. And one quick request, when we do the agenda next time, could we have a list of policy, like second read agenda? Policies to be reapproved, policies to be removed as 2 separate lists? Because I got confused the last time through which ones are we just listed out the policy names and some were coming, some were going. It would help me. Thank you.
You absolutely can. Any other questions? Okay, policy subcommittee, thank you as always. I know there's a ton of work. We will look forward to some second read policies at our next meeting.
And some first reads.
And some first read policies. We're just gonna keep doing this. All right. That concludes new business. We already finished. Old business, carrying right along. Subcommittee reports. Mr. Turner?
Just high-level updates. The equity subcommittee will be meeting soon to review particularly discipline across the district and some of those sort of related topics. The budget and finance, budget and facilities subcommittee will be meeting soon to review some of the midterm topics around facilities, and the compensation working group has met a couple times. We'll meet again in the coming week to try and push forward on that topic as well. So not particular updates, but just information that these meetings are happening.
Very good. Thank you. Any other subcommittee reports? Mr. Exit.
Just that since our last meeting, the school building committee had a meeting the following week on April 14th and got, updates on the, again, the current design work for where we're trying to lock down now some details about the facade of the building, particularly in the back side of the building, adding some potential splashes of color back in the more student-facing area in the courtyard, back where the younger grade playgrounds are, keeping the front of the building a little bit more stately, and adding a little bit of elementary school fun in the background, in the back of the building, and then also talking about some of the environmental concerns that have been raised at recent hearings of the Planning Commission and Conservation Commission, and the consultants that our designers and our leadership team has hired to respond to some of those environmental concerns.
Thank you. Okay, hearing nothing else, correspondence this evening. I would just highlight very briefly, I received a few weeks ago a letter myself, Chair West from the Select Board, and the town manager from the Chair of the Historic Commission, which I know I shared with you all. You may know, or you may have seen that the chair of the Historic Commission was at the Select Board meeting on Monday, raising some concerns, issues around the Roman house, the demolition, that process that we deliberated at the end of February. So based on some of the things that she raised, I'm going to meet with the town manager this Friday, and just sort of talk through some maybe potential options or decisions that might need to be made based on the issues that were raised by the Historic Commission chair. So I will provide you all with an update after I meet with the manager. So that's it from me. Buckle up. Future school committee dates and other notable items. Some of these are going to be repeats from the student representative report earlier, but April 30th, 2026, the Wilmington Middle School and Wilmington High School bands, grades 7 through 12, will be performing at 7 p.m. in the Joanne M. Benton Auditorium. May 1st, senior prom, Castleton, New Hampshire. May 2nd, Wilmington's annual town meeting, beginning at 9 a.m. in the Joanne M. Benton Auditorium at the high school. Reminder, we need 250 folks to have a quorum to start the meeting, so get there early. May 5th, the North Intermediate, Western Intermediate, and Middle School bands, grades 4 through 6, are performing at 7 p.m. in the Joanne M. Benton Auditorium. Wednesday, May 6th, is an early release day. May 7th, the North Intermediate, Western Intermediate, and Middle School and High School orchestras, grades 4 through 12, are performing at 7 p.m. in the Joanne M. Benton Auditorium. May 8th, Future Teacher Celebration, starting at the Wilmington High School. I don't have a time, but I imagine it's during the school day. We'll check on that for you. May 12th, Wilmington Middle School Chorus, grades 6 through 7, 7 p.m. in the Middle School Auditorium. May 13th, our next regular meeting here, 6 p.m. in the Town Hall hearing room. May 14th, chorus concert, 7 p.m., the Joanne M. Benton Auditorium at Wilmington High School. May 15th, Special Olympics Unified Game Day, 9 a.m. at the high school field. I know Jackson mentioned that earlier. If you haven't been, that's a great event. I would highly recommend anybody who's around check that one out. And May 18th, Deca Banquet, 6:30 p.m. in the Joanne M. Benton Auditorium at the high school. Mr. Turner, what did we miss?
No, nothing you missed. It's a lovely list this time. On the 8th, the Future Teachers event is at 9:20 in the morning at the high school.
9:20 a.m. Excellent. Anybody else?
I think you just show up at the Joanne M. Benton Auditorium on any night, and there's probably,
Any given night.
probably gonna be something great going on.
From here until the beginning of June. Okay. Hearing nothing else, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Mr. Golden. Second, Ms. Lord. All those in favor? Unanimous. Thank you. Have a great night.